members here tonight. Sir, who are you?
Guest.
Yes, well, welcome, guest.
Hi. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
You have questions?
please.
Gregory, KF0ILP. So,
Very good.
Welcome, Greg.
oh, thank you.
Chris, zero KSA. Welcome to the meeting.
Welcome.
Glad to have you guys. Please stop anyone, ask us anything you want. We'll tell you about the club, we'll tell you about activities, we'll tell you about anything you want to know. So, usually we go around the room first, introduce leadership. I'm Jeff Francis, I'm our CTO. I guess the board is basically sitting over here, so you guys go ahead.
No, I'm back here.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm Scott, AK6Q, Director at Large.
Dan at 2SRK, Club Soccer, I would be president. And I got one thing to go over after the leadership introductions.
AC5S, I'm the vice president, and I actually don't have anything to say tonight because I usually... Wow. Okay, all right, well,
You're presenting, sit down.
I will say something. No, welcome to everybody, our guests, and everyone else whose faces I haven't seen in a while, so it's really good to see everybody, and kind of a chilly night, but at least there's no snow on the ground, right? So we're all good, thankful for that. So welcome again, thank you for being here.
Here, I'll go. Randy K0TNG. I guess I do have something to say according to that. So, nice to see everybody. And Paul's selling something. Aren't you selling an HT?
Yeah, there's a UHF HT for $40 up there.
There you go. Okay, he didn't mention it, so.
Say 30.
Just
a second.
Who said that?
I don't know.
I'm Robert, I'm the AE0CA, the treasurer.
And that's our board. If you have any board questions, you ask any of these guys.
We have our chairman as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, Rich.
Brad, 84BA, board chair, non-voting, I just heard the cats, that's all.
Yes, he does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
By the way.
I don't know about
Can I give my one thing?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
So I'm going to make up for lost time for what Paul wanted to mention. Actually, Paul didn't want to mention this. I'm just going to steal some airtime. It kind of dawned on me as I was writing this month's column with 265 members. We got a lot of members. And this group started with an original 13 not that long ago. So to be able to grow to 265 is something that's pretty remarkable. And at the same time, too, at least at the board level, we're under the, I wouldn't call it the constant pressure, but the constant pursuit of what more can we be doing for our members? Is there something that we're missing? And I think it's important to kind of take that step back from the canvas every once in a while to say, you know, let's actually embrace what we are doing. And it kind of dawned on me just some of the good things that we are doing that I think that we don't even realize. And it was actually a result of when we put out our weekly update, it goes out on Facebook as well. We had a member of the PRA who had moved to Kansas not that long ago, a gentleman by the name of Randy, W0RDR. And Randy put on the Facebook page this week under our weekly update, he said, "Y'all don't know what a great thing you have going there. Enjoy it, appreciate it, and relish it. Great clubs like the PRA are not common, as I'm finding out. We've really got a great thing going here." And I took that message to heart with what Randy said. So I think sometimes when an organization, and that's what the PRA is, it's an organization. It's a club. And when it starts growing, ideas and suggestions. Maybe sometimes they'll feel like they're being heard or things like that, but boy, sometimes when we take that step back from the canvas and just take a look at what we've done to go from the original 13 members up to 265 as of this week, it is something pretty special. So let's continue to hold on to that. That's what I have. Back to Ned.
So as you'll notice, we are on month 2 of our new meeting format tonight. We're going to do the presentation after we do the next item, and then we'll do the business meeting at the end. So, if you guys need to duck out. So, here's the fun thing. Anybody got an upgrade, a new license, a new rig, a new key, a new mode? Anything they want to talk about? Some cool DX on probably 10 or 12 meters, I'm guessing.
I put up a Comet multi-band antenna on the top of my tower last Friday, and I hope to get up on the HF and start doing some DXing, I hope, so.
Outstanding.
Excellent.
And I talked already about a possible HF site for the HF station.
Even better.
Yeah, nice. Excellent.
Of course, it won't be on the tower, it'll have to be
Oh, ground now.
Yeah. Well, the tower's right next to my house, and I'm thinking this is gonna be a possibility.
Was the tower insulated? We can just load the tower.
Yeah, well, I put the tower up 2 years ago, it's been quite a journey.
Oh, yeah.
I finally got the antenna on it, so.
Congrats.
Very
That's
good.
great.
Brad?
Yeah, I've got over in the corner over there a TR-45, which is a brand new released CW radio, put out by a guy out of Pennsylvania, WA3RNC. Puts out about 5 watts. I've worked about close to 30 states in a month so far with that. And next to it is a homebrew, probably $30, $35 vertical antenna, resonant 20 through 6. It's got some 3D printed parts from my previous talk about 3D printing. Runs with some radials on the bottom and has been a cool project. And if you are interested at all in that, if you go to QRZ, to the QRP corner, it's called the $20 antenna, and there are 18 pages of people who have modified it and done different things, and so it's sort of a cheap, cool, vertical antenna that you can build for yourself.
Cool. Yes, Peter?
I have a service to offer to you guys. I can customize any meter scale, meter or dial or whatever. If you have, for example, a 1 milliamp meter and you want to show it a higher amperage with a shunt, I can make a new dial for it. If you have voltmeter or whatever. I have samples of that I can show you here. So whatever.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Any cool DX?
Well, probably not cool, but you mean Italy and Dominican Republic with 30 meters.
That's real good.
I did Saudi Arabia today on FT8,
Oh, that's cool.
but there's a hell of a pileup to get to it.
Okay.
But I am at now 31,975 contacts. At 25
Why
away.
so little?
Just a little.
He's knocking off, Woody. Come on.
Yeah.
Woody, what's holding you back?
One day a week work. Takes me 3 days to catch up.
So I work from home and I get my radios sit next to me, so some days I get more work done than others. I tell my boss that. So I watch JS8 call all day on 20 and 40 meters. And it's been crazy this week. I've gotten all over Western Europe, North Africa, Australia, New Zealand, all around the Pacific Rim. It's just been nuts. And that's on a terrible dipole. That's not even on the good antenna. That's
What
on
band?
A dipole about 6 feet off the ground on 20 and 40. And you can watch one come in and the other one go out. It's kind of fun to watch the bands go up and down. So if you haven't played with FT8 or JS8, they're the same modem on the back end. If you haven't played with those, try it. You can do amazing things with terrible antennas. Like I said, the antenna I'm using on that radio is hung 6 feet off the ground. It's not even my height. And I'm getting North Africa. So that's fun. Anybody else before we go to our presentation?
I'm building out a Vodahex2. It's actually a purchased X-beam aluminum mast. I'm actually going to have a rubber on the bottom and a tripod, so I'm slowly getting that put together.
For field day next year.
We'll talk.
And I have a new project. About 6 months ago, I announced a Python library for JS8 call, where you can talk to the API. So I built a whole web page now. This is listening to all my radios at home and shows all the activity that my radios at home are hearing live. It updates every 5 seconds. So if you want to see this, go read on the PRA list. pointers to documentation and code if you want to build it yourself. It's kind of fun. All right, guys, you want to do your presentation?
All right, awesome. We'll get going here.
Should pop up here in just a second.
Okay. Well, welcome to our presentation for November. We are going to do a presentation tonight on HF operation. And I'm Paul, AC5S, and we got Brad, AB4BA, and Scott, AK6Q. We're all taking a portion of the presentation. So I'm getting ready to turn it over to Scott. But before I do that, I had one of our new members come up to me a couple of weeks ago and said, "You guys talk about HF. And he said, "Well, I don't know what that means." And I said, "Well, it stands for high frequency." So sometimes we take for granted, right, that the terminology that we use isn't always understood. But a quick history on that. Back when radio was in its infancy, and you could transmit somewhere up to 1 megahertz, maybe 1.5 megahertz, 1.8. Everyone thought that was it. We weren't going any further than that. Technology would never allow someone to broadcast and receive it at 2 megahertz. And so up to about 2 megahertz is called medium wave. And then when technology allowed transmitters and receivers to work at 2 megahertz, people thought, well, that's it, And then 2.5 and 3 megahertz and 5 megahertz. And so they started calling everything above 2 megahertz high frequency. Now, back in the day, nobody used the term HF. Everyone talked about high frequency. And as we got into 7 megahertz and then 14 and 20 and 30 and 45, maybe 46 megahertz, that was all considered high frequency. And that was the terminology that was used up until about World War II. Because in World War II, both the Axis powers and the Allied power, we were using VHF, which was really high frequency, and then UHF was being used, which was even a higher frequency. So somewhere along the way, maybe World War II, early 1950s, it didn't make sense anymore to call the lower frequencies high frequency anymore. So people started abbreviating it, and they called it HF. So now we have HF is still there, and that's still from about medium wave up to a little below 6 meters. And I think, I believe Brad's going to cover this, that 160 meters is technically not HF or high frequency. It's medium wave. And 6 meters, is 6 meters HF? No, it is not. So somewhere around there, and I've heard a couple different numbers, but I think it's around 46 megahertz. Anything above that's probably not high frequency or HF. So if you hear the term HF, we're talking about high frequency from about 1.8 or 2 megahertz up to 46 megahertz. So does that clarify that terminology for anybody? Most hams today don't use the term high frequency. And if they do use it, they're talking about usually microwave, right? 2.4 gigs or something like that. Okay, so let me turn the presentation over to Scott, AK6Q, and I'll run your slides here.
So on the HF bands, there's a range of dedicated radio frequencies only available to amateur radio operators. Small differences between the countries throughout the world, but generally all countries have at least some privileges in the HF bands, as you're going to see here in a little bit. There's different operational modes allowed and suggested on different frequency ranges within each band. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Bands are usually referred to by wavelength, so 40 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters. But as Paul pointed out earlier, it's also megahertz. It's got an equivalency there. In the early days of radio, wavelengths were used to designate the frequency. And as we know, wavelength is 300 over the frequency in megahertz. We'll give you your wavelength. So in the HF bands, or high frequency bands, 160 meters we just talked about equates to 108 or 1.8 to 2.0 megahertz, 80 meters, and so on as you go down through there. As we talked, 160 meters is technically medium wave, not HF. That's kind of a layout of where those frequencies lie. And in between those frequencies are other entities, government agencies, military, all operate in between those. So those are carved out just for amateur radio.
And someone may notice we left off 60 meters, but we'll talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah. So we're going to go into the ionosphere, because that's really what allows us to get where we need to get around the world for our DX, or distance contacts. Derives its name from ion, which is a free electron. The ionosphere is 30 to 400 miles above the surface of the Earth. This is the most interesting area of the atmosphere for hams due to it affecting our propagation so much. HF communications varies with sun activity, the sunspots, other solar events, solar storms, the 11-year cycle, the season, whether it be summer, winter, spring, or fall, and the time of day, all play a role in the ionosphere and how it's acting. The ionosphere can refract or bend the radio waves, for HF more specifically. Radio waves bend enough will return around the Earth. However, others travel off into space when the frequency is outside of the ionosphere's bendability there. High frequency is where the signal is reflected back to Earth, is called the critical frequency. Amateur radio contacts of up to 2,500 miles are possible with a single skip off of the ionosphere. Worldwide communications, or greater than 2,500 miles, use several skips, hops, or bounces, if you want to look at it that way, when the conditions are right. So skywave. Radio waves that extend beyond the horizon by refraction are called skywaves, meaning they're going to leave. Two factors determine the skywave propagation: the frequency and the level of ionization. And as we talked, the level of ionization is affected by the time of year, the time of day, and the sun's activity. Higher frequency is the less it is bent. Highest usable frequency to a desired location on Earth is called the maximum usable frequency, or MUF. You'll see that in some tables, or some of the, I don't know what to call them, they're kind of an app that's on some people's website. Usually it has a black background. There'll be a picture of it here in a little bit. You will frequently see MUF, or critical frequency, as well.
And used to, I think the government agency in Boulder used to publish that on a hourly basis.
It's on a website now. There's multiple places you can find
it. And then
it.
Australia, they're really, really big into providing this data as well through a government site there as well.
And there's the app that I was talking about. Ionization in the sun. Ionization level corresponds closely to sun activity, including sunspots. They are on an 11-year cycle. Sunspots range from 0 to 150 in a numeric fashion. Solar flux is another aspect of that, and it ranges from 60 to 250. And Wayne, I know you'll know this, what was today's solar flux index? 140. That's good. Anything over 100, we've been down in the hundreds, seems like for years now. And it's just great that we're seeing that number go up. As that number goes up, the ability to make those long distance contacts on a variety of bands really, really opens up immensely.
How close are we, Scott, to our 11-year peak?
Our 11-year peak?
Sunspot peak.
It's iffy. It's predicted 1 to 2 years before we're maxed out.
So if you're a technician, I'll just throw this out.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're a technician and you got this 11-year cycle, right? And a couple years before the peak, it is the golden years. So get the book, get online, do an online course, whatever, but get your general, right, or get your extra, because, if you look at the next 2 years compared to where we were like 4 or 5 years ago, right, Wayne? I mean, like, this is magic.
Yeah.
The last few weeks even, longer than that, but the last few weeks have just been unbelievable. And the higher frequencies now are really starting to get super, super active. The days of being able to run a 10 watt, 10 meter mobile radio in your car and talk across the pond is getting very, very close, if not, it's happening.
Yeah.
So this is the time, just in case you want to know.
So for myself, I was, go ahead, Wayne.
I was just gonna add on the QRZ, if you look at that, it's only updated every 6 hours, so it's not always accurate.
Right.
Either way.
Right.
Good or bad.
Right. And I will caution people, here where it says like on 30 and through 20 meters, it's poor and poor. In this 11-year cycle, 3 or 4 years ago, going out, I do a lot of soda, as most of you know. I would see that, I don't care. I'm gonna go play radio, and you know what? I'm still making contact. So don't take this as gospel that you're not gonna make a contact. It just may be more difficult. It may open for a shorter period of time somewhere, but just don't be discouraged by that aspect of it. And as Dan had said earlier, for you technicians, 10 meters is available to you in some modes and in a smaller piece of the spectrum, which we do have band plans for you. Take a look at those, and if you need help getting on as a technician on 10 meters, get a hold of Paul, myself, Brad, Wayne, any of it. We'll help you. We'll make sure you can get there and get that experience to see what it's all about.
But upgrade to general, because you
Yeah.
get about this much bandwidth as a technician, and you get about this much as a general. Okay.
So on that 11-year cycle, yeah.
So we're 2 years away from the peak of the
From
cycle,
the peak.
and then it'll start going down again.
Yeah. This is, I got
When you get my
licensed.
age, you need to get on it and do it now, right?
Now, yeah. I got licensed in 1992, so this is starting my 3rd cycle.
Okay.
When I got licensed, I was a novice. That has come and gone. So I had very limited privileges, but I worked more in microwave. So I had phone privileges as opposed to CW privileges everywhere else. So really, this is my 2nd phone opportunity on a great peak. So take advantage of it. When they're gone, it makes it a lot tougher. It can still be done. It's just a lot tougher.
Cover those 2 bullet points in blue real quick.
Okay. So on here, for the high solar flux means higher maximum usable frequency. The higher the number for 10 and 15 meters, you need that to open for 10 and 15 meters to really be useful other than a very short hop. What we are finding here this last couple of weeks, 10 and 15 meters, we are getting into Africa, we're getting into Europe, we're getting into Australia on phone, which is a little more difficult than CW as far as getting there and having it understood. But those openings are happening, and that solar flux is coming up. We're getting to the peak of the cycle, so it's really exciting to be able to make those contacts.
So not as good for you guys who are trying to work all states on 80 or 160.
Right.
As the muff is lower, then that's more complicated.
We'll talk a little more about 80 and 160 here in just a second. So in the ionosphere, there are the following layers, as you recall from your test. There's the D layer, the E layer, and the F layer, where the black was the surface of the Earth. The D layer, the first layer, closest to the Earth, is caused by UV light, forms during the day, meaning it gets charged during the day or ionized during the day, and it disappears at night. Absorbs lower frequency signals are absorbed, and you will notice what they call gray line, which is sunrise, right roughly there, half hour before, half hour after, sunset, half hour before, half hour after, are really the critical times, because you're getting, as it's winding down somewhere else, it's winding up for you, or vice versa, and you're getting further at that opportunity. So those are really peak times. The E layer, next one up, thought to be caused by wind shear. Not usually there, can last minutes to hours. Commonly is springtime, May, July. Usually affects 6 meters and below, and it's rare at 2 meters and above. However, it does occur, and there's a whole nother phenomenon on VHF called tropospheric ducting, which is more common for making those contacts.
How many people operate on 6 meters? I know Dan does some. Okay, all right.
So the F layer, which is next to the highest, or is the highest, responsible for most of your HF propagation. It is caused by UV light from the sun and the sunspots. Forms during the day, dissipates at night again. Maximal usable frequency varies with the ionization level, sometimes splits into F1, F2 during the day. Don't get too wrapped up into these EF layers and what they do or how they do. Just helps explain maybe how you got where you were going. That's the most
Yeah, I mean, 20 meters works during the day, but as we get closer to the peak of the sunspot cycle, 20 meters may be open 24 hours a day. And then, you know, at night, you're going to need a layer that works at night because others don't. So that's how you can get DX with 160 and 80.
So this is the paper band plan that you have available here. If you need more, let us know. We'll make sure to get you guys some. But you can see on this, on the band plan, get down in, get oriented here. So 160. Remember, this is right outside of HF. This is really getting into HF at 3.5 megahertz and the rest. But so your novice technician, those few novices that are left in the world, but mostly the techs, you have no privileges except for CW. You get your general license and look at, you pick up these green boxes where the general are on here, and you start carving out quite a bit of space. When you go to advanced, which doesn't exist, there's still a few advanced folks around here. Who's one of them? There's one on the air the other day.
Don.
That's it.
He's getting ready to upgrade extra. Yeah, he's working on that.
So Don has an advanced call class, so he is the A in here, but that's a dinosaur going away. Those few that have it, but most of them just upgrade to the extra because there's no code involved and it's just the test. But extra, you get all of the privileges. Just take that test as well. That was my incentive. I wanted those privileges, so I took my test.
And there's that strange one.
60 meters.
60 meters, which we'll talk about, I think, a little later, right? But
I think you've got a spot.
I don't really have a lot on it, but I'll make something on it.
it's the only band that's channelized, like commercial operation, commercial band. So we'll talk about that. But it's a very cool band.
Yeah. So 160 meters, as we said, is.
Hold on a second. We're going to stop.
Doesn't matter unless you
No,
want to keep
take
going.
it. Run.
Go back to the previous slide. Go back to the previous one if you can.
I can.
You can't. Okay.
I can, yes,
You
I
can.
can.
Good. Well, everybody needs to have one of these. You know, I brought some copies there at your station. Okay, because I can't remember, you know, exactly where different things started. One story I was going to tell is there was a contest, and I was working guys on 20 meters, and this guy comes booming in out of Canada at 14,148. And so I picked him up and he says, "You can't work me." And I said, "Sure I can." He said, "No, you can't." I said, "I'm an extra." And he says, "I don't care. You can't work me." And he said, "You're out of band plan." In Canada, they can actually work all the way there. Now, the thought was, well, I can just turn on my CW and put it on that same frequency and take him out too. But you know, or whatever. But he was right. You know, so you need to understand where your band plan is and what you can and cannot work depending upon your specific privileges. Go ahead. So now we're going to talk about the different bands. As everybody has said, 160 is medium wave, okay? 1.8 to 2 megahertz. It's predominantly, you can work some stuff during the day. local regional. You know, you might be able to hear Texas, but you're not going to go a whole lot further than that. At night, longer distances certainly are possible. If there is a thunderstorm anywhere in the United States, you're going to hear it. Okay, it is going to be noisy. One of the buttons on everybody's radio is the attenuator, and this is when you use that attenuator button, when you have all that static crashes and everything like that, that will help bring that noise level down enough to be able to hear it. It's a very, very challenging DX. You can do CW, but it's hard to work, you know, other countries with it. Now, you can work all states, and it's a challenge to do it if you do it on phone. You can do. I've done everything except Hawaii, mostly on FTA. Paul has done. He's done phone, all 50 states, and it took him 3 to 10 years, depending on which version of the story he's telling that day.
But he's only been licensed for 7 years.
Yeah. So it's challenging to do DX. It's basically local, regional, nighttime, winter. Not a lot of thunderstorms in the winter, so you can it's a lot cleaner in the winter. Sometimes you'll get on there and you'll hear people saying, well, the band is long or the band is short. That's just where their contacts are coming in. You may be skipping over the guy, you know, 100 miles away and hearing him 500 miles away, or vice versa. So the antennas are huge, 260 feet and above. Now, with that, you know, I've worked, except Hawaii, all 50 states, on an 80 meter end-fed antenna. So you can work stuff with a compromised antenna. You do not have to have a 260-foot antenna. You know, your SWR may be high, you may not be putting out a lot of watts, but you can certainly do it. There's no technician privileges on 160.
Yeah, and the reason they call it the top band is there's a lot of people on there with really, really big egos, like our former president. And so they call it the top band. And even though it's not technically HF, it kind of falls in our conversations in today's world. When we talk about HF, we throw 160 meters in that. So
yeah, you hear a lot of guys out in Kansas and Iowa, these farmers that have these huge towers and huge land spreads. They'll be on that.
Yeah, a lot of people there a lot of folks would say if you're going to run actively on 160, you have to run down. And if you hear some of the nets at night on 160, you listen in. Everybody's running at least a kilowatt, if not full legal limit. So, not that you can't, but that's why everyone's hearing each other.
Yeah,
so well.
Over the years, that was the most unfriendly band because of the linears. They would not let anyone break in, and they're close-knit with their buddies.
And their attitudes.
They have an attitude. But FT8 on a rainy storm day is very good.
Yeah. FT8's brought a lot of activity to 160 meters, and which is good because it's a band. We don't think that the lower frequencies are in danger of being lost, but that's not true. All of our bands are in danger of being taken over by somebody else at some point in time. So the more we can use these bands, especially the ones that are typically not used as much, is important. So,
Randy,
didn't you do Vanessa on 160?
I used to run Vanessa and whatever the other one was. Yeah.
Raquel.
Yes.
Do they give awards for running a 260-foot antenna in an HOA?
Yes, they do. Yeah. We will get you an award. If you can get that in, we'll get you an award for the
that involves
best
nighttime work along the fence margins, or across the street. Okay, 80 meters, huge band. One of the it may be the biggest band. In fact, it's so big that you'll hear people talk about 75 meters and 80 meters. It's the same band, it's just different portions. 75 meters is the phone portion, 80 meters is more the digital CW portion. Again, it's day, several hundred miles. At night, it's possible to work worldwide. I worked Japan. You can always work Japan on any band, anytime. That's just one of the rules. But I worked Japan and I think Australia the other day, but generally not. You can get to the States, United States, Canada, and Mexico. But right now, you're not working beyond that. Again, the same thing, static crashes, you're going to hear that from the electrical storms. The attenuator helps, the noise reduction helps. It's challenging for DX. Again, we talked about the 75 meters with foam. It's a rag chewing band. There's lots of nets. One of the cool nets that I like, 3916, every single night it's on. They do trivia and then they do some other things, and we're getting to the point around Thanksgiving where they start doing the Santa net, which is sort of fun to listen to hear the kids talking to Santa on that. But the 3916, there's several other nets on there, and you know, there's lots of people talking about their healthcare issues on that band too. It's still a pretty long dipole, 133 feet. I've got an end fed. One of the beauties of the end fed is it doesn't have to be a nice straight line. Mine sort of goes up in zigzags, and I've got, you know, really good coverage on 80 with that. Tech CW only privileges.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys I listen to on 80, by the way, that are they're physicists. Well, they say they're physicists, and you listen to them for a while, and they start getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject, and you kind of raise a BS flag, like, that isn't true, and then you look it up on Google, and yeah, they're physicists. And by the depth in which their conversations, nobody else gets nobody breaks in, because nobody understands anything they're talking about. So anyway, there's some people like that down there. It's a very, very fun band.
It is a fun band.
What's that? Where is that?
80 meters.
Physicists are all over 80?
Well, they're
the two
there.
guys who are 38, around 30-60.
Yeah, you'll find little enclaves of different expertise. There's always engineers on. There was a couple of docs on one time that were complaining about billing. You know, it's like, okay, that's a limited audience right there. 40 meters. 40 meters is really a jack of all trades. You know, if you could only have one antenna, arguably a 40 meter dipole would be the antenna to put up as a first antenna. During the daytime, you can work the whole United States and beyond. At night, certainly worldwide as possible. You can get into Europe now easily, North Africa, Australia, Indonesia. It's usually open somewhere at some time during the 24-hour period. The antennas are very manageable. You can do verticals, you can do dipoles, you can do mag, you can do end-feds, absolutely. Pretty much the entire gamut is open as far as antennas. Technicians only have CW privileges on 40 meters. 30 meters is sort of the middle child, honestly, between 20 and 40. 20 and 40 being the big ham bands, per se. It's got sort of characteristics of both. Again, you can work the whole United States during the day, nighttime, worldwide. It is very specifically a work band, and that means basically no contesting. Okay, there is no contesting on the band. And the reason that they've developed those particular bands, there's 4, I believe, is because they're so narrow. Okay, they're very, very narrow bands. If you had a contest, you would just wipe out the whole band. So as a sort of a gentleman's agreement, there are no contestings on 30, 17, 12, and I can't remember what the other one was. It's very similar to 40. It's similar to 20. It has characteristics of both. The antennas are getting shorter and shorter. You can do DX with it. There is no, 200 watt max, so you don't crank up your amplifier.
Why is that? Is that just to limit volume too?
I don't know why that decision was made.
Or congestion, not volume.
I think we're a secondary user on that band.
Yeah.
Okay, that would certainly be it. And if we are a secondary user and there are other military and
meters. Yeah, I think it's military.
Is it military use? Then they don't want people cranking up a 1500 watt amp. So that actually, what's cool about that is it puts everybody on equal footing. You know, everybody, you know, you haven't got one guy who's blasting and, you know, and again, because the band's narrow, you can't have too many signals going on there, so everybody is sort of equal there. So no voice and no tech privileges.
Excellent band for FT8.
Excellent for FT8, absolutely. I mean, you can really work.
You get the best of both worlds sometimes. I mean,
You do.
you actually get better distance and over 20 sometimes.
Right.
And then between 40 and 20, it's just perfect.
And not as many people are on that band, so
Right.
so it's a really good band for DX. 20 meters, that again is sort of my favorite band. It's sort of the DX band per se of ham radio. You can work more than 500 miles. You can work 1,500 miles or beyond during the day. Right now, the day, and it goes into the evening as we get further into the cycle and more ionization of the various layers. It's gonna be open later and later and later into the night. I'd say around, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night, it pretty much shuts down right now. But that's better than it used to be. So it's arguably one of the best DX bands. You know, a lot of people on it. When there's contests, you'll just see on the SDR just this block of people that are in that area that are contesting. So everybody contests on that band. So you can make a lot of contacts there. The dipoles is only 33 feet long, so you can put that in your backyard. You can do verticals, you can do beams. There's no tech on that, permitted on that band.
That's the overall length on that dipole?
That is the overall length, yes.
Each half is 16 feet, whatever it is.
Yeah.
16 feet per side.
Yeah, 16.
And you'll find a lot of SOTA activity, a lot of POTA activity on that band in the daytime. It's just, it doesn't matter what day it is.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna find a ton of activity.
The band, there's always something going on in the band. 17 meters, a little more DX. We're getting more into the more DX types of bands. It is also a work band, so it's a narrow band and there is no contesting. But what's nice about it is less people are there, so SOTA and POTA hang out there because you can hear them there. You're not getting overwhelmed by the next guy with a huge amp. Hundreds of miles during the day. At night it opens up. Shorter antennas. Verticals work well. This right here, my home, it goes up considerably higher for 20. That's about the height of a 17. It's somewhere between 15 and 17. I didn't count the segments. So that's all the higher that you need to be on 17. No tech privileges on that band. So 17, good DX. If you want to talk into Europe and North Africa and South Korea and maybe someday North Korea, then 17 is one of those bands.
It's also a really good aviation band. You'll find there's a lot of aircraft on that band, and if you listen on a regular basis, you'll hear aircraft every day.
You're talking about Air Mobile types of?
Air Mobile.
Yes,
Yeah,
Air
yeah,
Mobile.
Air Mobile.
Yeah, Air Mobile.
Air Mobile.
Air Mobile. You'll get it. I've talked to a FedEx pilot over the Gulf, and one guy coming down over LAX and all that. So they get on there, and if you hear somebody say Air Mobile, get on there because it's a lot of fun to talk to them.
Isn't it AM?
Nope.
No, it's
SSB.
HF, but
It's like
like early F-16s that did, the early A models, they ferry them around different places to mothball them. They'll be on HF and they'll be on 17. A lot of your, like I said, your airline a lot of corporate pilots hang out there.
Yes.
So it is HF.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a fella yesterday on, I think it was 15 meters. He was in an Airbus 300 coming from Florida, going out to Oregon, and he was out in Nebraska. I worked him, and he was explaining that in their tail section, they have an antenna built into the tail section that does basically 20 meters up on upper sideband only. And anyway, it's built into the aircraft, and as long as they're a ham radio operator, they encourage them to get on and use it so they're familiar with it. So a lot of use.
And to Woody's point, short-range local aircraft communications and aircraft is all they, you're right, yeah.
15 meters, again, DX band, great DX band, and we're getting into the prime years for that. You can work hundreds and thousands of miles. At night, it stays open to a certain point. Again, in the early evening, it's closing down, but eventually we'll get better. All the DX expeditions are going to be on 15 meters. So
always.
If you want to get a DX to Antarctica or something like that, 15 meters would be the place to look. Dipoles are short, verticals are excellent, beams are common. Technicians can do CW on that. 12 meters, weird little band. Again, it's a work band because it's so narrow. FT8 is fun to work on that particular band because it works. I don't know that I've hardly heard anybody else other than FT8 on that band. So it has a lot of characteristics of 17 and 15. Good DX, short antennas, no tech privileges. So it's just, again, I've worked all states, or actually I don't know if I've worked all states yet on 12, but FT8 is so digital is useful there.
At the bottom of the sunspot cycle, there's nobody on.
Nobody on there.
It just doesn't work. So.
And then lastly, 10 meters. This is sort of the new fun band that we're all sort of discovering. Everybody else, all these guys, they've been around here forever. I've been a ham for 4 years, so I haven't. This is all fun to me. I've never seen a 10 meter. When I started, 10 meters was like, all that is a bunch of static. There's not anything there, not even FT8. All of a sudden, I'm hearing voice. I was talking to a guy from New Jersey today, and I heard him for a while, and then it was just like dropping off a cliff, and he was gone. And but hundreds of miles worldwide. Night it can start opening up, but it's really opening now. I don't know, maybe 10 o'clock in the morning till sunset-ish. It's really opening up, and you can work all over the world right now with that, and it's only getting better. It's quiet worldwide, as I said. It's a big band. If you look at that, it's huge. And so you can spread out. You don't have to worry about bumping into somebody else. It's the only band that has a voice for text. So there is a small portion of voice for text. And there's digital and CW and everything else. So it's a really cool band right now, and it's becoming a lot of fun. Cameron.
So easy way to remember like your bands, like UHF, VHF, etc. is rules of 3. So your medium frequency, so your 160s, 300 kilohertz to 3 megahertz or 3,000 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz to 30 kilo, or 3 megahertz to 30 megahertz, 30 to 300, 300 to 3 gig. Really easy to that way you kind of have at least an idea of which part of the spectrum you're sitting in.
Randy?
I've been having fun down there just doing QRT with that little True SDX. I think it's amazing. I was talking to a guy, QRT back in Virginia, and we were getting 5 nights back and forth without any problem at all.
Well,
that's doing about 3 watts.
That's exactly right. With the sunspots and with the bands opening up, 5 watts is plenty. 5, 10 watts. You can do some amazing things, and if you're doing CW, that's the world is opening up with the sunspot cycle. Go ahead. You're on.
Oh, okay. I'm on. So what do we do on HF? Well, there's a lot of things you can do. We'll go through a few of them here. We talked about 80 and 160 meters, a lot of rag chewing. But there's also a lot of rag chewing on 40 as well, and sometimes during the day on 20. So a lot of people do that. DXing, we talked about that as the sunspot cycle is improving, making contacts all over the world. Contesting, how many people participate in contests?
Field day counts, by the way.
Field day counts,
It's
right?
not a contest.
But
there's
there
points.
there are so many contests, I couldn't even list probably 10% of them, but there's at least one contest every weekend, and probably more than that. There's contests that are focused on individual states and special events and just all kinds of things. So if you're into contesting, certainly HF is where you want to be. Awards. There are more awards than we can talk about tonight. DXCC is something that a lot of people work towards when they start getting, they get their generals, start working HF. DXCC is 100 countries or more, but 100 countries you can apply for the award through ARRL, and you get your cards or all your contacts checked by a ARRL checker. And it can be done, I think, electronically now as well.
OTW will do it as well.
And when you get 100 DX indies, then you can submit that and get a nice little plaque, nice little award from ARRL. It says and then you go on the DXCC rolls, and you're always on that roll. And it gets published every year, so you can always go back and look and see when you got DXCC. There's worked all states. Worked all continents, is that right?
Worked all continents,
and
all states.
Many other awards, and not just through ARRL, also through QRZ and other organizations have their own awards as well. Special event stations. Randy's in charge of our special events, and we do some fantastic special events. Last one was a B-17 event here recently, and we were on HF and made 180 contacts from just a simple wire antenna over at Wings Over the Rockies. There's a special event station on one of the HF bands, if not most of them, every weekend, but a lot of them on 20. A lot of them on 20 on the weekends. Scott mentioned SOTA and POTA. If you don't know what that means, we have summits on the air and parks on the air. And these two have gotten very popular over the last several years. And we have several members that are really involved in it, Dana being one. How many parks have you worked, Dana?
25 or so, I think.
25?
I mean, activated or hunted?
Hunted.
Close to 500 now.
500, activated about 25. So we have a whole other presentation on what that means, but we've gone through some of that before. We'll do it again this next year. But anyway, SOTA and POTA. QRP operation. HF is not just for the 100 watt stations or the 1500 watt stations. What's the maximum legal power now? Is it 1500? Is it 1500?
5K.
Well, with your Henry, that's probably right.
Or if you're in South Africa.
I remember listening to a guy talk to a station in Mexico one time, and he asked him how much power he was running, and he said somewhere between 5,000 and 7,500 watts. I think that was even beyond their limit, but he was pretty proud of the fact that he was lighting up all the receivers in North America. QRP is a huge part of HF operating. How many people operate QRP? QRP is technically 5 watts. It's now probably 5 watts, but some people, use 10 watts and whatever. But there are a lot of hams that operate HF continuously, all the time, every day, every month, whatever. They don't ever. They never operate 100 watts. It's always 5 watts. So a lot of people do QRP operation. You'll find a lot of QRP operators on all the bands. And during the day on 20 now, there's quite a few people around 1425,
30
in that
1430.
1430,
I think. Yeah.
Okay, there's nets. Has anyone here jumped on a HF net? Okay, there's Salvation Army net. There's
Maritime Mobile.
Maritime Mobile net. There's
14.3. Yep.
a lot of nets during the day, a lot of nets on weekends, some nets in the evenings, and quite a few nets in the morning actually. So you can check those out as well. You can operate almost any mode that you want to on HF, sideband, CW RTTY, PSK 31, FTA, JT 65, Olivia, Vanessa, single side, no, not, that's slow scan TV, and there's more popping up all the time. Also, I just put a little comment there, the digital modes are very popular on HF. They may be the most popular operating mode on all the HF bands. I mean, they're just 24/7. There are people on there running primarily FT8. And I know Woody's got 31,000 contacts, but
interesting I find is, I work many of the same stations over and over again on different bands, but there's a period like every 6 weeks is when new people come on board. I don't know why that is. It's just all of a sudden, where my left panel on my screen is usually all green because I've already worked all those guys, new people are popping up. And for a couple of weeks, it's new people, and then all of a sudden, I'm back to green again because I've worked them all.
People are upgrading, going from tech to general to extra, and they
takes about 6 weeks.
And shipments of radios.
Right. HRO gets their shipment.
Yeah.
So, but you know, FTA's really made a huge impact on amateur operators.
The statistics is 60% of the HEM community has tried it.
Yep.
Now, how many have stayed, we don't know.
Right. And some people come and some people go, right? Because if you're working Kansas 600 times, it probably isn't, you know, all that great, but
well,
you know.
In my case, I'm curious to see if they survived. You know, they're all senior citizens.
Right.
And,
okay, so just a couple notes here on the HF operating. One is all of the HF bands are not channelized. So you can operate on any frequency that your privileges allow within that particular band, except for 60 meters. It is channelized. So there are specific frequencies that you have to use. I'm not going to go into all the details on it. A lot of the radios today have 60 meters built in. The channels are programmed from the factory. You can't change them because FCC wants us on specific frequencies, and sometimes you get a chance, just go, you know, Google it or pull up the regs, or there's several articles on 60 meters. But it's a very cool band. We share that band with the military, and once a year they do a joint communications where amateurs, the only time that I know of, and where it's legal to actually talk to military stations. And the guy that put that whole thing together was here for a presentation. He works for Northcom down in Springs with the military. And I just recently talked to him because he was actually supposed to be here this month, but he got tied up, had to go overseas. But he will be here next year for a presentation, and he's going to cover 60 meters, and also he's going to cover the automatic channel linking, ALS, automatic link command, as well, that the military uses. Okay, watch your band edges, right? Because your signal is, how wide is the sideband voice signal?
2.8K.
Supposed to be 3, right? But sometimes they're a little wider than that, so you need to keep in mind that you need to stay within the amateur bands on all your emissions. Nobody owns a frequency except for the guy in Canada on 14313.
If you're in doubt, ask him.
He says he owns it, he probably does, who knows?
Carol.
But if you never listened to Carol up on 14313, it is an experience. It is an experience that you will never forget.
Just don't have any young children or new hands
Right.
in the room.
And it's funny that every year someone will get on there and they're just appalled. But it's like, you know, that's just him and...
You know that giant knob that's on your radio?
Right, just tune it on.
Just turn it.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting guy, very interesting guy.
You
But
just call him and irritate him, you know, that's always fun.
He enjoys it.
Yeah.
well, if you do call him and talk with him, he'll talk to you he'll just chat with you for a few minutes.
Yeah.
But he just can't stand it. Then he starts getting off in the political areas and other stuff, and so.
He's witty.
Yeah. Okay, but nobody owns a frequency, so you know, avoid interfering with other stations. That's really important. You know, if somebody is, you know, if you can hear them on their 3 kilohertz edge of the 3 kilohertz signal, if they're coming into your receiver, move further away. Just there's a lot of band width that you can use on all these bands for the most part. And always ask if the frequency is in use before transmitting. With a lot of these nets, just keep in mind that maybe there's 10 people on the net, but you can only hear 3 based on the location of your station, propagation, stuff like that. So I can't tell you how many times I've said, is the frequency in use? And 3 or 4 people come back at once. Yes, right? So I just didn't listen long enough to know that the frequency was in use. There was a net in use there. But listen, and the more you can listen, if you can listen for a couple minutes, usually that'll tell the story. Okay, learn and use standard phonics for all calls if you can. Now that does not include contests, right? Because A is America and Z is Zanzibar and what was that?
H is helicopter.
Right. So anything that you can say and do to catch the other station's attention, right? So, okay, and useful call signs for ID is always important. Okay, I think everyone, well, this might be a slide that there'd be some argument on, but I still think in most cases voice or phone is the most popular. And just keep in mind on this slide, the thing I wanted to point out here is that lower sideband is used on 160, 80, and 40, and upper sideband is used on the other frequencies. So if you accidentally put your radio on lower sideband and you're on 20 meters, you're going to wonder what's going on, because it's not working right. You need to send it back to HRO. But that's very common to do. Has anybody done that? Anybody? Everybody's done that once or twice. Okay. Okay. There's 2 ways you can actually, when you first get on the air, and you're not exactly sure what you can do, how to get on the air, how to talk to people. You get on the air. You got your license yesterday, and you get your radio hooked up. So you can start with answering a CQ. All right. So someone out there's calling CQ. CQ 20 meters, CQ 20 meters. This is whoever in California calling CQ. So you can answer that CQ, and that's a great way to make your first contact, okay? Because that person is looking for someone to talk to, and they're calling CQ, and you can give your call sign, and just like magic, you're talking to an in station in California. But if you listen on the bands long enough, you'll know that at any given time there may not be anybody calling CQ, or you're not hearing them because of your location or whatever. So you can initiate the call by calling CQ yourself. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Give your call sign, say CQ, CQ, CQ. This is into SRK, calling CQ on 20 meters. Or CQ, CQ, CQ. This is into SRK, calling CQ on 60 meters. Or 6 meters, and standing by. So that initial call that you make it as long as possible, okay? You don't need to make it 5 minutes, because I've heard people call CQ for 5 minutes, because by that time I get bored and I have to tune to somewhere else, right? But you need to do it long enough so people tuning across the band, looking for stations calling CQ, will hear you. And you'll be amazed that sometimes you'll get a pileup. And what is a pilot point?
A whole bunch of people trying to get to you.
Right. And when that happens, just work them one at a time. And don't feel like you have to work them like a contest, right? Just 5-9 and go on to the next station. That would be a contest. It's how you work somebody to contest. You're going to, by the way, all contest reports are always 5-9. But you don't have to do that. If you want to have a conversation with the first person that called, fine, and then clear. And those other people are usually there waiting in line. And that's kind of called a pileup. And sometimes they all come back to you at one time. and you're fairly new to HF, you got the headphones on, or maybe you got the speaker turned up, and it sounds like just a bunch of garbage, right? But you can listen for the last couple characters of their call, or you can listen for the number of their call, and you can go back and say the 6th station, or the 5 station.
We're to say the stations begin with a K.
Station.
Yeah, try that.
Right. K0FCC. Okay. DXQSOs are a little bit different. And if you've never worked a DX station, especially if it is a pileup, okay, where you're trying to work, someone works Saudi Arabia FT8, but if you're working phone and maybe you're trying to work a European station, or maybe you're trying to work Norway, and other people are working that station or trying to work that station as well, you know, just listen before you transmit. Listen to how other people are doing it. If you've never done it before, listen how they're doing it. And listen to the stations that are successful. All right? If you say AC5S, AC5S, AC, you know, if you get out of sync with what everybody else is doing, they're not going to call on you. If they're calling CQ, they're not going to call on you. And listen for if the station is actually preparing for a contest. So let's say it's a Wednesday before a big contest on the weekend. They may be on there just trying to run through as many QSOs as they can. So if all they're doing is giving out 5 nines and moving on to the next station, if that's all they're doing, they don't really want to rag you. And they don't care to tell you about what the weather's like in Norway. So listen before you transmit. If they're just giving out 5 nines and moving on to the next station, hey, thanks for calling, then that's kind of the process you're going to follow. We already talked about all reports during contests are always 5-9.
So that being said, 5-9 means I received your call and see you later?
No.
Great question. Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Every contest is a little different as to what information they need from the contest. But in many of the contests, and many, that's just a signal report. So all they're looking for is a signal report and your call sign. But
so signal report, right? The 5 is subjective. I would say, right? How well am I hearing you? If I give you a 5 to 3, I read you loud and clear, no issues.
Okay, yeah.
The further down that scale I go,
5 by 5 in my lingo.
Exactly. So if I give you a 5-9, it's like the military telling you it's a 5-5. I got you 5 by 5.
Okay.
The 9 is how I'm deflecting on my signal meter. So if you're,
S9.
you know, if you're at 5-9, you know, I'm hearing you great, and you're full scale on my signal meter. If I give you a 4-5, well, I'm having to work a little to hear you, and I'm only getting maybe half the power.
So it might not be a 5-9.
well, correct. But in contest, the protocol, in contest, the protocol is always 5-9, regardless of whether it's a 5-5, 5.
So they can move on to the next.
They can move on to the next station. That's right.
I heard you. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Great
And I guess what I was trying to tell you was,
Yeah.
Great question.
that is a great question. And in some contests, that's all that's required, is your call sign to 5-9. That's it. In other contests, there's different information you have to provide, and that you're getting from them. But great question, yeah. And then there's some stations that you talk to that they just always use 5-9.
Well, it's been 30 years since I've been on, so I'm on the radio tonight, so you guys may have to put up with me.
Nice.
So does everybody know what split is?
Explain it.
So a lot of contest stations, if everybody's on the same frequency, the pileup is so huge they can't work anybody. So they listen on one frequency and they transmit on the other. Now, it would be nice if they told you that.
Somebody will.
But somebody will tell you if you're on the receive frequency transmitting. A lot of times they will put it out on a DX. Well, a lot of times you can see that information on a DX cluster, where someone who has worked the station will put on there that they're running split, and they'll give you the split frequency. And then every once in a while, the DX station or the DXpedition, a lot of them use it. They'll say they're up 5 or they're down 3, listening 3 down, listening 5 up. The only thing I will tell you about working split is the most important thing is that if you've never set your radio up to operate split and you run across a very, very rare DX that's, it's a DXpedition that's on an island that only gets activated once every 50 years. And you're like, nobody in the PRA is going to work this station. I'm going to get it and brag about it. But then you realize you've never set your radio up to work split before. And there's a button on there that says split. But that's not necessarily the whole end of the story. Right? So this is a great thing for everyone to do this week. Go home. When you get in front of your HF rig, figure out, get your manual out, because that's what I have to do, and figure out how to set your radio up. Yeah, like Dan's over there saying, oh, I can work split on any radio, but
I'm going to do that on my phone.
Yeah. So get your manual out and make sure you know how to set up split operation on your 7300 or your 570 or whatever it is.
And
what's a manual?
Right. That's a different presentation.
And know how to turn it off. Because the next time you go use it,
that's right.
You can't hear anything because you're transmitting on a frequency and you
right.
hear someplace
and
else.
You're like, well, why aren't they hearing me? They're 20 dB over.
Right.
They should be able to hear me, right? And so, excellent point, Brad. So that's one of those things like, if you need to use your clarifier or RIT or whatever, I mean, if you need to use something like that, you need to know how to use it, right? You need to have figured that out ahead of time. Okay, so what else do we have there? Yeah, and a pileup in a contest. If there's a pileup and you're trying to work this rare station, give your call sign one time and then just listen. Okay.
Then turn the amp on.
Then turn on the amp and you'll actually work.
Tell them your QRP.
But here's the thing. This is where listening becomes extremely important. Okay. Every operator is different. But you'll find that in some cases, they don't take the first station that you hear, right? They take the fifth call. Or they wait till till people quit calling, and then they take the next station that they hear. Because they're just like you are. It's all garbled. And they're trying to pull out a call sign. So listen and see how the DXpedition or the Rare DX or whatever DX station is, listen on how they're picking stations. And you might find that it doesn't do you any good to be the first one to key up as soon as he says QRZ. Because he's never worked the first station in the last 30 minutes. But he's worked the 5th station, they call it, or the 10th station. So see how he is hearing and how he's working those stations. Because in a contest where everybody's running, a kilowatt like Wayne, and you're running 100 watts, that doesn't mean you can't work Saudi Arabia, or you can't work Israel, or you can't work. But timing is extremely important. So I'll just tell you the story. The first contest I ever worked, I never transmitted. I just listened. For the whole weekend, I just listened. Because I didn't understand what a contest was, and I didn't understand how it worked, and I didn't understand that you could go on the internet and figure out, because every contest has a little different response that you have to give to the other station. Maybe it's a CQ zone or something like that. But once you listen to it for hours, you start getting a feel for the cadence and how the different stations operate. And some of these people, they're difficult to understand in the first place. So it takes time. But anyway, don't be like some stations and get on there and you call, when he says QRZ, and you're going to go back to him, don't just continue to give your call sign every 3 seconds. He will never call on you. If he hears you and he hears you do that, he will never call on you. He won't do it. It's just a principle of the thing. So be polite, and if there are stations on there that are doing that, just go to another frequency, because it's annoying. Okay.
Bill had a question.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I just, there's different strategies you can use. For example, Wayne has a big booming voice, and I have a really high light voice. So sometimes I'll sound like Mickey Mouse. I'll go really high and go W0SUN really high so they can hear me up high where everybody else is coming in low. I've had success with that.
Absolutely. When they get on the radio, or convince them to be on the radio.
Yeah.
Because they sound different than every other person that's on the radio.
Whiskey Zero Sugar Uniform November.
Some people even go a little off frequency.
For off frequency, yeah.
Right. And some people wait. You know, sometimes when a DX station comes on, that's a popular station, it gets put out on the DX cluster, right? And so everybody sees it, and they all click on that frequency on their software, takes the radio to that frequency, you're ready to rock and roll, but about 2,000 other people just did that. So let that kind of work its way out of the system, so to speak, and then, you know, maybe 30 minutes later, maybe 45 minutes later, maybe 2 hours later, if you really want that country, it'll calm down. And so there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Or even listen to see if you can actually hear the station.
Absolutely.
They talk right over the top of them.
Right. Okay, you need to learn all you can about propagation. It's very, very important. We've got people here in the club that are, I will say, certainly experts at it, and there's several in the room tonight. The first thing here is exactly what Scott said. I believe Scott said, and he is absolutely, he's 1,000% right. We used to hear people say, "Oh, the bands are terrible." There's always somebody on one of the bands somewhere. I mean, don't always believe what you hear, right? It's because it's always funny, like on let's say a Wednesday, the bands appear to be dead, right? Nobody's on the bands. But then Saturday there's a contest, and you can't find a place on 20 meters to even transmit. The bands aren't dead, there just wasn't anybody on the air. So get on the air. Get on the air at different times. You know, you might do better in the morning, you might do better in the afternoon, evening, whatever, maybe on 40, maybe on 20. If you can only put up one antenna, put up a 40 meter. Unless you're working during the day, you don't work any at night, then put up a 20 meter. But just get on the air. A band is usually open somewhere when propagation is not good, and that is absolutely correct. So instead of working Germany or Norway or a DX station, now shift your focus to work all states, right? Because you're going to maybe have a better chance of working Nebraska, not Wyoming. You never work Wyoming very well, but yeah. So you're wanting to work DX, but work all states. You know, so whatever you need to do. We covered most of this. Worked all states is what a lot of people do when they get their general. That's just a very common award you can get through ARRL, but it's also a good way to build up your HF operating skills. And some of the states, for us in Colorado, very much like working Rare DX, right? How many people have tried to work Wyoming on one of the bands and spent months, right? Maybe years.
South Dakota and Idaho.
Now, Brad, likes to joke around. He's a jokester, but I did spend 5 years working all states on 160. But which state do you think I couldn't ever work on 160?
Arizona.
Oh, Hawaii. Hawaii is almost impossible with the setup I had. But also a couple states back east were almost impossible. So you just have to be real patient. Okay.
So I got a quick question. Worked all states, can that be on any of the bands or just one specific band?
Any band.
It can be on any bands, or you can do what a lot of people do. They'll work all 50 states on 20 meters. Then they'll work all 50 states on 40. And then they'll try to work all 50 states on 80.
Just
or you can just work all 50 states in multiple bands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever is of interest to you. But if you've worked all states on 20, kind of like Woody's worked 600 contacts in Kansas, then you kind of move on, right, Woody?
Well, I'm working grids.
Yeah, you're down to working grids, right?
Yeah, I'm bored with states and continents.
Yeah, Randy?
But you gotta have confirmation from those contacts.
Right.
Right.
Not everybody does.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go through this real quick. Almost all of my DX has been on vertical antennas. Vertical antennas are absolutely fantastic. They can go up in HOA restricted areas. You know, if you have to put it up at night and take it down during the day, whatever the case is, they're fairly inexpensive. I think ground mounting works best. You must have a good radio field. It doesn't matter how long the radials are, but you need to have as many radials as you can get down, mounted on the ground for a vertical antenna installation, unless it is an elevated vertical, and then you still need radials, but you don't need as many. Some antennas like the 4BTV, 6BTV, antenna that Wayne has, Butternut, you don't really need a tuner either. You don't need a tuner at all because you can tune the antennas for a specific portion of the band you're going to work. If you're always going to work digital, you can tune it to operate in the digital area and not need a tuner. It's always going to be phone. Some of the antennas, like on the higher frequencies, you can tune them to work across the entire band without a tuner. But other vertical antennas like the 43-foot Miracle antennas require a tuner. But anyway, absolutely excellent antennas to get on the air with. You will hear a little more man-made noise than you will with some other antennas. Wire dipole. The wire dipole is probably absolutely the best antenna to get up if you can get one up in the air or in your attic, wherever. They are easy to build. They are extremely cost-effective to build. You can build your own one-to-one balun. We've done that in some of our Elmer meetings. Throw up some wire and 16 feet aside on 20 meters, and you're on the air. And you typically don't need a tuner, and the antennas work extremely well. If there's one downside to verticals is that they work best at a given height, different for each band. So we're not going to get into that tonight, but any wire in the air is better than no wire. So if technically the antenna should be at 30 feet, but you can only put it at 20 feet or 10 feet, whatever. Just put it up in the air and it will work. So wire dipoles, absolutely excellent. Okay, here's some mistakes that new HF operators make. You get your general license and you go down to HRO, and they pretty much will sell you a G5RV. And those are great antennas, but they have to be installed correctly. If you read the instructions on height above the ground and things of that nature, typically most of us can't install that antenna or the G5RV Junior to meet the installation requirements. The manufacturer of the antenna, they have 2 telephone poles set up in a field, and there's nothing around those telephone poles, and they string it up at the height that it's designed for, and the antennas work fantastic. But in a lot of other cases, they don't work well. So avoid the G5RVs and other types of multi-band wire antennas if you can. There's a lot of antennas out there that we call them miracle antennas because they say no radials, cover all the ham bands, no tuner required. How many of those do you have, Dan?
One now.
Okay. Well, in most cases, there's no magic to this. So if an antenna says it covers all the ham bands, no radials required, and on and on and on. It's probably too good to be true. So, you know, if you just have space for one antenna, put up a dipole, and you will not end up with some of the shortcomings and downfalls that you have with the multi-band Miracle antennas that don't really ever work exactly the way they're advertised.
The only one I would say that might be the exception is an end-fed halfway. Those things work really well once you get your wire length dialed in. But the other one, you know, I've got mine in my backyard. It's set up as an inverted V. And when I look, like I'll get on FTA just to check propagation. I can work all of the United States on 20 and 40 meters with no issues whatsoever. And I was working all of the islands down in the Caribbean into South America during the last contest.
So the mistake you would make there as a new operator is if you don't ask for help in putting up an in-fed wire antenna, then that would be your mistake. So there's a lot of knowledge within the club, and some of these antennas, you know, we're just basically talking about the dipoles and the verticals, but there's a lot of people here that can help you with antennas, and as you get into some of these in-feds and other types of antennas, there needs to be some thought process that goes into it, and you need some help. Yes?
Well, I have exception with what you're saying about the G5RV. I have a 102-foot inverted V. Top of my house hides it from the HOA. My two legs go out. You can't see it from the street. And 32,000 contacts. I mean,
yeah.
It's just, and 24,000 of those were at 30 watts.
Yeah.
I moved up to 100, and by changing power, going from 30 to 100 watts, changed the entire area that I was hitting with the signals. Just completely changed.
Well, and it's not to say that a G5RV or other multi-band Miracle antennas, it's not.
I use an antenna tuner too.
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't work, but if you're new, new general trying to operate, the installation parameters are more critical with most of those antennas.
At the store, we have more criticism because of the HOA than anything.
Right.
People want that magic antenna, which doesn't exist.
Right. That's the kind of point of this. Yeah. And then the last thing is that, as Dan would say, you know, any antenna is better than no antenna, and put up as much wire as you can. If you can't get an antenna up that you know, if you look at the advertisement, you can't put that particular antenna up. Get as much wire in the air as you can, and the more wire you get up, the better you're probably going to be able to operate. Okay, I think that was it.
Yep.
Okay. Scott and Brad, come on up. Any questions for Scott and Brad or myself about HF operating?
Question? Yeah, I don't know if you covered this. I missed part of it because I got a phone call. Did you cover how to confirm contacts? Like,
no.
Like, do you have to have the logbook of the world still? Or
yes.
Do you send QSL still?
Yes.
That old school?
Yes. So everybody's different.
Okay.
I only use QSL cards. I don't use logbook of the world for DX because I want the card. There's some very, very cool cards that I've gotten from around the world.
Cool.
And most operators, not all, but most operators will still send a card. But you have to send them some greenbacks. So each card, the cost to actually get that back and put it in your collection is relatively high. I would say most people use Logbook of the World anymore.
I use Logbook of the World for everything, but if I get a QSL card, I will send one back. And you know, on our special event stations, I would say 10% of the people will send a QSL card. So we've got 50 or 60 from our special event stations, and it's fun to see cars from all over the country.
Cool. When you do a special event, do you have to send them a QSL card, or is there a way to get a QSL card without sending one?
Well, what we do on our special event stations, what we do is
we refer them to the website. I set up a QRZ website with our special event information, with our contact information that says, please send a self-addressed stamped envelope to this address with for a QSL card. We get them, it takes 2 or 3 months to get them. Our last event, I got one yesterday, or 2 days ago, right? Yeah, you had me another. And then I'll fill out our QSL card and send that back to them in their self-addressed stamped envelope. So
What do you do with theirs? Just stick them in a drawer?
I have, I've got them, if you'd like to look at them, they're at my house, and I've got them in a big envelope. Someday we'll have a clubhouse.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So in some parts of the world, that QSL card is extremely important and meaningful for the operators to design, and it's not so much anymore in the U.S., but in some places around the world, it's an honor for them to be able to send that card to you. And some of the work that goes into these cards is absolutely
amazing,
phenomenal.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was wondering because that's the way I did it back in the last time I really was heavy into HF. It was all QSL cards.
Right. Well, and just as an aside, this most recent event with B-17, Scott took a photograph of that B-17, which unfortunately, as we all know, no longer exists. So we were sending those photographs out to those people. So those people have a picture of a B-17 that no longer exists.
Now, another thing, do people still use QSL bureaus? I'd like to have a presentation on that.
I just got a nice envelope in the mail this week from the New Jersey DX Association because my call sign's in Tulan, so all my bureau cards go through.
Hearing will be closing in 20 minutes.
We should have a little presentation on that in the future because
Yeah.
I don't understand those.
Yep.
Yeah, the bureaus are fantastic, and ARRL is the largest of all the bureaus.
Okay. Oh, cool.
I think we need
Any
to
other
get
questions?
to the meeting, the business meeting.
Real quick, while Jeff's setting that up for the last little bit, show of hands, how many people have never operated HF?
In the last 30 years.
Okay, that counts.
No, that's good. So, very good. All right. I was just curious. Some of this was a rehash for folks. Hopefully, got something new out of it. But really, for the people who have not experienced it, hit one of us up that does HF. I'll invite you to my house. You can come play HF at my house anytime.
On his K4.
On the K4.
Yeah. and Winter Field Day is coming up in January. We're going to try to do it out at Stan's place. We're still working that out, and we'll be on the air for several hours that day.
Don't be bashful.
So
Yeah.
the radio's available.
Yeah, it'll be warm in there.
Right.
So don't be bashful. Come out and we'll get you on the air. Just ask.
Absolutely.
Say, I want to get on the air. Say, we'll get you on the air.
Get something going on a weekend or something.
Yep.
If there's enough interest, I'll go to a park and throw a wire in the air.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I've got my mobile report, I think I'll take about 2 minutes.
So I'd encourage everybody, get on HF, it's fun. Ask anybody here, send an email to, board@parkerradio.org. Get on our message board, put something on there that says, there's probably 10 or 15 people in this room that would invite you over to play radio. 20 years ago, 23, 24 years ago, when the bands were awesome, I used to talk to Europe on my drive to work in the morning on a crappy hamstick with an Icom 706 in my old Land Cruiser. That was just a daily thing, is talk to Europe, because it passes the time while you're driving. And those are the conditions we're getting back to right now. So get on it, it's fun. We're going to try to power through this really fast, because we got about 10 minutes and they're going to kick us out. So the other Brad is not here tonight. But I know the one thing he wanted to mention is Elmer Night, which is our other club meeting we have every month, is the 28th? 28th. It's either this room or the room next door. We never know which one until we show up. So Elmer Night is when it's a great night to ask questions, do projects. Sometimes we do antenna builds. People bring radios, they bring gear. We play with laptops. We do all sorts of crazy things. Come to Elmer Night. It's really fun.
I don't know. That one is an open forum, meaning there's no presentation of swords, questions.
So sometimes somebody will just stand up and start talking about something, whatever. It's kind of free form. Come on, it's a great meeting.
Ham of the year, Ken.
I'll make it real quick. For those of you that are getting the email blast, there is a award that we're going to be doing in 2022. It's the inaugural award for the PRA Ham of the Year. Details are in the newsletter. Vote early and often. No, I'm just kidding. One vote per PRA member. Nominate a fellow PRA member for it. We got some great awards. So very basic survey for you to fill out. Board members are excluded from being nominated from that. So there you go. But we can nominate people. So have fun.
Next one down is meeting, repeater committee. We met with the engineering group. We all met at the public library a couple weeks ago. We were kind of trying to get back on track with the repeater group. If you are in the repeater group, you're still in the repeater group. I know there's a lot of strange things going on. Nobody's kicked out, nobody's gone. We're still figuring out how we're going to move forward. We want to get the whole repeater committee together at some point. Just hang on, we're going to get there. For the short term, I'm trying to keep things together and keep it moving forward. We are looking for someone to lead the repeater group. Does not have to be, and in fact, we're not looking for an engineer specifically to lead the group. We're looking for someone with some leadership skills to lead the group. Somebody who's organized and can put together meetings and budgets and agendas and things like that. If you're also a great engineer on repeaters, that's super cool also. But we want to make sure that everybody knows we're looking for leadership for that group, and we're hoping to have it by the end of the year. We got one candidate in the bucket already, but not everybody knows this yet. We want to make sure everybody knows before we pick from a bucket of one. So if you're interested in leading the repeater group, you do not have to be a repeater guy. It's great if you are. We're looking for someone who can organize it and run it. That's what we're super excited about. So that's the repeater committee. Is Fox Hunts, we're doing another one?
Yeah, our last Fox Hunt really worked out really good at Stan's house. And I'm planning on doing another Fox Hunt, kind of a spur of the moment thing, so watch for an email. If everybody know what a Fox Hunt is? Anybody doesn't know what a Fox Hunt is?
Well, we need more foxes.
Yeah, we got one Fox. What it is, a transmitter, it sends out Morse code. You use your radio with a directional antenna like UHF or VHF to find it. You go find it. Whoever the first person is that finds it gets a radio. And remember that our club, we got a lot of people, but we have fun and we do stuff. Some clubs don't.
Our next portable ops group is our next portable ops deployment will probably be Winter Field Day in January. More to come.
Okay.
With a pop-up, we may do something around Christmas holiday, Christmas, New Year's.
Yes.
Snowshoes somewhere possible.
Robert, do you want to cover this or you want me to? Dan, somebody?
So we're getting to that time of year. Probably Amazon is starting to be on everyone's list. If you are an Amazon shopper, please use smile.amazon.com through your regular account sign-on. It's all the same thing, all the same deals that you'll see. Trust me, the prices are the same. Mrs. SRK approves. You can select a charity of choice. The PRA is listed as a charity of choice. So for your holiday shopping, if you would use smile.amazon.com, let your family know, let your friends know, have them select the Parker Radio Association. A little bit of every purchase gets kicked back monthly, quarterly, back to the PRA from Amazon. So, we pick up a couple $100 a year through that as well. King Super shoppers or any of your family members who are through the Kroger Corporation nationally can also use the rewards program under Community Rewards. Just the use of your card, you can actually select a charity of choice. Parker Radio Association is also listed there. If you need help navigating that through King Supers, please see myself or Robert. We'll be happy to get you signed up for that through the King Supers or the Kroger program. Back to Ned.
All right. Loader equipment. One of the really cool things you get in this club for your $25 a year. Is that what we are now? $25 a year. We have radios and we have equipment. We have tools. You can check those out for free and borrow them. If you are a technician thinking you might want to upgrade, if you want to practice, if you want to try a new radio before you go buy it, we have several different radios. We have some crimping tools and SWR meters, things like that. Cameron runs our loaner program. Talk to Cameron.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Cameron.
All I've got left at the house is the 705 because Ron's picked up the 7300 tonight. So I want one sitting at the house right now. If you want to try a QRP radio.
Yeah, so get on the list, reserve it, play with it. It's one of the benefits you get as a member of the club. It comes with your membership, so take advantage of that. If you're not using it, he's probably using it at his house.
I just bought a new one. I got my own nice amp radio now.
John, you want to talk about?
Yeah, speaking of services we're trying to add for the club, we're looking at trying to get a HF station set up for remote access for club members. I've been making some good progress the last few weeks. I had a site visit last weekend, and I've been talking to a few other people about land use possibilities. Hope to be wrapping that up soon and really begin to make some more progress on the project.
Website status and update. We got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is we lost one of our website guys who was helping us out. He's unable to give us the time he used to be able to give us. He did fantastic work, but it is no more. The good news is Jeff Karpinski, our former CTO who moved somewhere out east, has volunteered to remotely continue to update and maintain our existing webpage for us. So that's absolutely fantastic. He built half of it, so there's nobody better to take that over and run it for us. We are still working on a completely new replacement website as well. I've seen it a couple times. It's looking fantastic. I don't have a date on that yet, but we got somebody working on that.
Voting will be closing in 10 minutes. Please let us know if we can be of assistance as you complete your visit.
Another note on here is the server that our current website is running on is going to be migrated. They're literally going to put it in a truck and drive it across town and put it in a different data center.
That's completed.
Oh, is it completed? I was going to say it's coming up. So
That happened, yeah, that happened last night.
Okay, it was last night. I was thinking it was still coming up. So I was going to say we're going to have a brief outage in the middle of the night, but never mind. TRA shirts, Robert.
We should be getting the shirts from that last order here soon. I was hoping to be here tonight, but didn't quite make it, so that's the only way. That's report. Let's put the slides in real quick.
Yeah.
We got cash in the bank. Let's see, PayPal, the King Supers, Amazon Smile, money you see there, the King Supers money you see there, both they have, which is finishing, that's what we get roughly quarterly. August was our last payment from King Supers. There's still on the positive side of money coming in versus going out, so that's always good. The committee allocations you see there below right there. If anybody's got any questions, you can always reach out to me to ask, and we're ending up the year pretty good.
Cool. And while Paul was talking, I was on my laptop looking at my radios at home. At home, right now, while we're sitting in this meeting on JS8 call, which is not nearly as popular as FT8, I'm hearing Switzerland, England, Germany, Scotland, Ireland, Pakistan, South Africa, Canada, and Mexico. Right now.
Are these all voices in your head?
Yes, they are all. How did you know? They are all on right now, again, with an antenna I have strung across my backyard at 6 feet high. So go home and get on the radio. There's all sorts of fantastic stuff on right now. Before we close, anybody with anything else? Because we got
One
the
quick
chairs
one.
back. Scott.
Field Day. Any interest in Field Day? Please send an email to fieldday@parkerradio.org. I'll get you onto this.
June Field Day.
June Field Day.
The big one.
Thanks for coming out. Great meeting, great presentation. Thanks to Paul, to Brad, and Scott for sharing their time, talents, and treasures. We'll see you at Elmer Night next week. And until then, have a safe night, drive safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.